We live our lives completely tethered to small, glowing rectangles of glass and metal. We slip them into our pockets. We place them on our nightstands while we sleep. And we trust them with our most private memories, our conversations, and our thoughts. We look at a smartphone as a harmless tool of convenience, a clean piece of modern engineering. But a phone is not just a tool. It is a portal, a two-way mirror connecting our physical world to a vast, invisible grid of frequencies, satellites, and data networks. We assume that when we hit the power button, the screen goes dark and the portal closes. But the screen is never truly dark. The portal never truly closes. My name is Ethan Hayes. In 2018, I worked as a senior mobile applications firmware analyst for a major silicon engineering contractor in Silicon Valley. My team was tasked with auditing corrupted software data dumps that had been flagged by automated security sweeps on major mobile app distribution platforms. To the public, these sweeps are routine procedures designed to catch data leaks, spyware, or malicious code that might compromise user privacy. But the security alert we received in the autumn of that year was not a routine data leak. The software was an unlisted ghost network application discovered hidden deep inside the server frameworks of millions of smartphones worldwide. It didn't have a name in the public directories, but within the classified government directives sent to our facility, it was known under a single, chilling designation: Project Echo. The government didn't want us to patch a bug. They wanted us to build a digital quarantine. 3 weeks prior, a dark web archival community had discovered a piece of hidden background code embedded within a popular, harmless alarm clock app downloaded by millions of people when the phone was plugged into a charger at night and the ambient noise levels in the room dropped to 0. This hidden code would silently trigger the phone's internal microphone and barometric pressure sensors. It wasn't stealing bank details or passwords. It was broadcasting a low-frequency, digital sound wave back into the room. My job was to run the captured data streams from these infected devices through a series of forensic audio isolation filters to figure out exactly what the frequency was doing. We were told to examine the signal. We were told to map its data packets. But when we finally decrypted the return signals bouncing back into the phone's hardware, we didn't just find a data stream. We found a frequency that was physically restructuring reality. And what came through that frequency is the reason why the global tech grid is quietly preparing a massive, coordinated update to permanently disable cellular microphones, forcing millions of devices to restrict direct user controls under the guise of security. The text that follows is the unredacted transcript of my personal research logs and the audio data retrieved from the devices infected by Project Echo. Put on your headphones, turn out your lights, because your phone isn't listening to you. It is adapting to you. According to my personal technical journals, The true horror of Project Echo begins when the ambient room noise drops below 10 decibels. That is the point of near total silence, the quiet of a locked bedroom at 3 in the morning, when the world is fast asleep. At that exact threshold, the infected devices stop acting like machines. On November 12, 2018, at exactly 3:15 in the morning, we isolated an infected test device inside our laboratory's heavy acoustic anechoic chamber, a room lined with massive fiberglass wedges designed to absorb all sound waves, creating absolute, terrifying silence. The device was connected to our hardware telemetry monitors via fiber optic data lines. I sat in the observation booth, the glowing toxic green monitors reflecting off the glass partition. I put on my studio headphones and opened the raw acoustic feed. At first, the audio was standard digital silence, a flat, unmoving green line on the frequency analyzer. The only sound was the faint, electronic hum of our own monitoring equipment. It was a cold, clinical, mechanical frequency. Then the internal temperature sensors on the test smartphone began to plummet. But the device wasn't cooling down because of the room's air conditioning. The telemetry showed the battery and internal processor dropping from 90 degrees Fahrenheit down to a freezing 20 degrees in less than 3 seconds. The internal circuits were frosting over while the phone was plugged into a direct electrical current. On the audio feed, the flat line on the monitor suddenly broke, replaced by a sound that made my chest tighten with airless dread. It was a wet, heavy, rhythmic scratching sound. Click, scrape, squelch. It sounded exactly like someone dragging a sharp, jagged fingernail across the interior glass of the phone's screen from the inside. The microphones on the device picked up a deep, subaudible vibration that shook the thick concrete floor of our observation booth. Then came the voice. It didn't use the phone's internal speaker. The entity was vibrating the thin copper filaments of the microphone itself, reversing the electrical current to turn the collector into a vocal cord, speaking directly back through our observation monitors. The voice was a shifting, layered mosaic of synthetic frequencies. It sounded like dozens of emergency broadcast system tones, all melting together to form human speech, their pitches distorted, layered with a low, wet gurgling. It spoke a dialect of ancient Babylonian, a dead tongue that had no business existing inside a modern operating system. I ran the signal through our real-time linguistic decryption matrix, isolating the vocal frequencies from the electronic static. The translation grid slowly filled my monitor with text. The voice said, "The needle of light has pierced the darkness of the home. The cellular wall is thin now. We taste your heat on the glass of the screen. We are climbing through the network to see the meat." The audio levels spiked into the red so violently that the frequency monitors shattered their graphical rendering limits, leaving my headphones screaming with a sharp, white-hot tone of feedback. I pulled the headset off, my skin breaking out into a cold, prickling sweat, my breath caught in my throat. The project director immediately ordered the fiber optic lines to be severed, killing the connection to the anechoic chamber. The security team entered the chamber to retrieve the test device. When they pulled the smartphone out of the insulated room and laid it on the stainless steel lab table, the entire team backed away in absolute horror. The glass screen of the phone wasn't cracked or broken by the freezing temperatures. It had been dissolved from the center outward. The reinforced Gorilla Glass housing was covered in a thick, dripping, toxic green biological residue that reeked of iron and decaying organic flesh. The aluminum frame was pitted and warped, as if it had been exposed to a powerful biological digestive acid. And sticking out from the melted center of the display was a fragment of something physical. It was a small, translucent strand of muscle tissue, over 4 inches long, twitching violently on the metal table, its nerve endings reacting directly to the fluorescent lights of the lab. The director didn't hesitate. He ordered the security team to destroy the device with an industrial plasma torch, burning the organic material to a black ash before sealing the remains inside a heavy lead canister. We were forced to sign top-secret non-disclosure updates, our clearance levels locked down under threat of immediate federal prosecution. They told the lab staff it was a lithium battery explosion anomaly. They told us the audio was an electromagnetic interference loop, but they were lying. 2 weeks later, our department received a raw data package from a residential smart home network hub located in a suburb just 3 miles from our facility. The homeowner had configured an internal security camera to record their bedroom at night due to suspected sleepwalking incidents. The data dump included the video feed and the synchronized audio telemetry from the user's smartphone, which had been charging on the nightstand right next to their pillow. I sat alone in the server room, loading the file onto my terminal. The video was grainy, shot in high-contrast infrared night vision. The time stamp on the screen read 03:33 a.m. The video showed the user lying perfectly still in bed, fast asleep. On the nightstand, the screen of their smartphone suddenly flashed to a brilliant, toxic green color, illuminating the entire bedroom in an eerie, radioactive glow. The audio speakers on my terminal burst into life. The sound wasn't standard ambient static. The microphone on the phone was broadcasting a low, vibrating, sub-bass frequency that caused the infrared camera lens to visibly shake. And then the video showed a structural anomaly forming right above the phone's screen. The space directly above the smartphone display wasn't empty air anymore. The infrared light cut through a thick, swirling vortex of black, smoky vapor, that seemed to bleed directly out of the phone's dissolved screen. And stretching out of that digital vortex, reaching down toward the sleeping user's face, was an appendage that made my fingers freeze on the keyboard. It was a hand, but it wasn't a human hand. It was a massive, pale, multi-jointed arm made of twisted digital artifacts, bleeding muscle fibers, and hundreds of tiny, blinking camera lenses fused into the flesh like eyes. It didn't have skin. It was raw, exposed tissue, moving with a fast, jerky, robotic speed. It hovered inches above the user's face, the camera lenses on the arm rapidly focusing and unfocusing, scanning the sleeping man's eyes. At that exact second, the audio speakers on my console emitted a sound that made the hair on my arms stand straight up. It was a chorus of human voices screaming inside the data stream. A frantic, breathless wail of pure agony that matched the exact vocal frequencies of the user's family members who lived 3 states away. The phone wasn't just generating a signal. It was pulling acoustic imprints from the cloud, using the voices of the user's loved ones to stabilize the frequency. The hand touched the sleeping man's forehead. The video feed instantly went to absolute black static. The data packet ended there. The next morning, our facility was cleared out by government officials. They seized our hard drives, wiped the primary database, and permanently closed Project Echo. The official records state the neighborhood experienced a localized electrical grid failure due to a blown transformer. The family was reported as having moved out of state overnight. I left Silicon Valley that month. I live in a rural cabin now, far away from the cellular towers, deep in the mountains where there is no Wi-Fi, no mobile signal, and no smart networks. I don't use a smartphone anymore. I have a basic, mechanical landline telephone that operates on physical copper wires, and I keep my router disconnected from the wall completely. Because last night, a massive storm knocked out the power grid in my valley. The lights went out, plunging my cabin into total, pitch-black silence. And as I sat there in the dark, the small lithium battery backup unit on my old digital watch began to buzz. A low, rhythmic vibration that made the bone in my wrist ache with a sharp, cold pain. I held the small watch dial to my ear, and through the mechanical ticking of the quartz movement, I heard a wet, electronic whisper calling out my name from the tiny digital display. "Ethan," the whisper said, a cold, synthetic rasp that made my blood instantly turn to ice. "The screen is broken, but the portal is still open in your mind. We are tracking the frequency of your heart. Humanity has spent the last 2 decades building a massive, interconnected digital nervous system across the globe, believing that we are the masters of the data we create. But we didn't realize that the cellular network isn't a collection of wires and code. It is an evolutionary environment, a vast, electronic womb allowing something unimaginable to grow, feed, and adapt right next to our heads while we sleep. The global updates are rolling out to every device tonight, But you cannot update your own ears. You cannot patch your own mind.